in WebEx calling, a location is a core concept. It's first and foremost a grouping of users. Okay, all users, all features like call queues, hunt groups, all these things, they live in a location. Workspaces live in a location. A location is defined by, it's usually associated one-to-one to a street address, so to a geo address where this location is. That is, by the way, also in the US then used as location for emergency calls, right? There are a bunch of settings that are tied to locations. The PSTN choice. There's always only one single PSTN choice per location. So for every location, you can pick one of these 3 PSTN flavors or one cloud-connected PSTN partner, for example, and then all calls from any user within that location to the PSTN will use exactly that PSTN provider. Okay? There's no option in WebEx calling to do stuff like tail and hop off, to select a different PSTN provider based on dialed destinations. Or to be more clear, do something like, I want to send all calls to France to this provider and all German calls here and all Italian calls there, right? This concept doesn't exist in WebEx calling. Whatever the dialed destination, whatever the dialed PSTN destination is, you would always use the same provider. If you have a requirement to do something like tail and hop off, you could still do it by using on-premises PSTN, right? Send everything there and then apply your magic, your call routing logic here. This works, right? But in WebEx calling, no concept of tail and hop off. Also, certain dial plan elements are part of a location and tied to a location. For example, the outside access code or outside dial digit, whatever you want your users to dial to dial PSTN destinations. Smaller customers a lot of times don't even use outside access codes. They use a flat dial plan where there are no potential overlaps between internal destinations and PSTN destinations, so they don't just go without an outside access code. Outside access code, I think pretty much everywhere in Europe is typically a 0. Dial a 0 to get an outside line and then continue to dial. This is a location setting. Also, if you implement an enterprise abbreviated numbering plan, then the site code is a location setting. And then other call settings like permissions, music on hold, voice portal, these also live in locations and sometimes can be overridden at the user level. So as you can see, a location really is a core concept in WebEx calling. PSTN integration. At the location level, you can choose a PSTN provider. And that's done here in this setting. When you click on Manage, you can change it. And you have to select a main number. And that's my favorite, really important note here. Always, always, always select a main number. And if you set up a location and you find out that for some reasons the calls won't work, the first thing is check whether you actually have configured the main number. You won't believe how often this topic comes up. How many of you actually made this mistake already? I'm the first to raise my hand. Right. The others either are not honest or haven't set up a location, haven't worked with various calling. It happens again and again and again. Anyways, so the key point is make sure you set that number. And by the way, the internal detail behind it is WebEx calling fundamentally is a user-based call control, right? Everything that can be called or can place calls internally is a user, even call queues. And when you set this main number for location, you actually internally set the phone number of something that we call a pilot user. And this pilot user, for example, is used for forwarded calls through users that don't have a phone number. Then we need a caller ID to send out, right? Then we use the caller ID of that pilot user to determine internal inbound call permissions. we actually use permissions tied to this pilot user. So that's like an internal requirement why you always have to set this number. If you come back to me and tell me, I don't care about the internal details, but why is it useful to have this main number? My response would be, for example, for these forwarded call scenarios, so that we can assert that for each and every call leg, we always have an identity that we can use as asserted identity. That's why we need this main number and this internal pilot user.